When you go into your voting place, you should have in your hand your sample ballot all filled out with the names and parties of everybody that you want to vote for. So you should have that in hand when you go. And if you have any question, I will help you fill that out today. And I've got my computer here. We'll look up if you're in Hamilton County. If you're in another county, we'll look up your other county. If you're in a whatever.
I will find it.
And I was looking for my own set of announcements, and I went to a 15-page announcement. Yes, this is actually very handy, by Faith. Now, Faith Gingrich gets, is she here today? Faith Gingrich gets, is she here today? No, but she's here. Here's a picture of her. She has a 15-page list of everything that's going on in the county. I particularly like her announcement because it starts with us. Right here it says weekly. And the first thing it says on Tuesday, 12 to 1, Greater Cincinnati Democrats meeting, and it gives the address and time. So we are the first one on her list. And then it goes to Wednesday, the weekly address, and then Thursday, and then it goes monthly. Then it goes the first week of the month, and then it goes the second week of the month, and then it goes the third week of the month, and then the fourth week of the month. And there are 15 pages of what to do on this one. Okay. And I'm going to hand this one to Peter and see if he wants to put in just a link to her address. If we can learn how to do it. Well, we'll see how to do it. This one is only 5 pages, but it gives it without all the pictures and stuff, without all the colors. But it has all the announcements of everything that's happening, including everything that's, all of the stuff that's happening in terms of, going and protesting against Procter & Gamble for their toilet paper. I mean, we're down to the nitty gritty here.
Oh, we're on a roll now.
Oh.
We're on a roll now.
Yeah. Is it too loud?
Yeah. A little loud.
Is it better this way?
No.
You like the other way? I'm sorry about that.
We won't be able to be here if we don't.
Well, we need to be comfortable with our neighbors. I'm happy to work with them. I'm not trying to be difficult here.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. Okay, well, I just want you to know, I'm not gonna list all the announcements because I have either 5 or 15 pages of them. But depending on which ones you want. And let's hear about from our group, who has announcements that need to happen. Mike.
Hold it close.
I got to see Tracy Hunter last night. There's a meeting every Monday night at Reverend Lynch's church on Summit. And they're continuing to fight this corrupt system beyond Tracy. But she's in good shape, she's fired up, but her probation requirements are awful. She has to pay $3,800 a month, and she has no livelihood except for her church. She can't go out of the state. She can't go 50 miles away from Cincinnati. On and on and on. They're setting her up to violate her probation so they can send her to prison. But she is in good shape. She's fired up to continue to lead against this corrupt system. It's not just about her. It's about all of us who get screwed by the criminal justice system. So if you'd like to help, they're continuing to meet every Monday night at 6:30 on Reverend Lynch's church on Summit.
Okay. Yes.
Slightly different yet somewhat related topic.
We can't hear
Louder.
you.
Louder.
Turn it.
Is this better?
No.
Stand up.
Is this better?
Is it on?
Is
There
this
you
better?
go.
Yeah.
Is it on? Did it get
It's
turned
on,
on?
yeah, it's on.
It's on.
Green.
Okay, slightly, somewhat related. The Metropolitan Area Religious Coalition of Cincinnati, in concert with a number of the municipal judges, has begun a court watch project. They've completed the first several weeks of pilot training with 4 judges, There are now 8 judges who have signed on. There is a court watch training for people who are willing to be trained to be court watchers. The courtroom, the theory is that everybody behaves better, including the judges, if they know they're being watched.
There you go.
So there will be people who will be identified with badges called court watchers in the courtroom for purposes of observing, taking notes, whatever. And there is training for those who wish to be court watchers. Again, it's Hamilton County Municipal Court. That training is taking place at Mount Auburn Presbyterian Church, just down Taft, Thursday evening from 3 to 5 p.m. on Thursday. So I've got some flyers about it, or you can contact the Metropolitan Area Religious Coalition. See me and I'll give you a flyer.
Thank you.
Is that a volunteer position?
Yes, these are volunteer positions.
Give the microphone to David, that's good. And one of your flyers to Peter. Good, we're on a roll. A copy of everything needs to go to Peter.
Okay.
Any other announcements? All right, go for it. James?
Go ahead, Mike.
Reverend?
Well, I just want to say that Mike and I went down to the march last Wednesday for the homeless, and that was good. We had quite a lot of people, extremely diverse racially, and people met in Laurel Park and got to know each other and all, and then marched to City Hall and had speakers there, mostly homeless people spoke to us, which I thought was the very best way to have speakers. They each told their story of how they became homeless and how much they tried, to find houses that they could afford, And so that was great. And I do want to say, I mentioned Michelle Morales last week, and her daughter, who is in prison. She's been there for 12 years from something she had nothing to do with, almost nothing to do with. And so I finally back in touch with her mother. We somehow lost contact for a few years. And so she's hoping that like Tara Patterson got out with David Singleton's help, he's now working on her daughter's case, Aria, the daughter. And we're all just hoping she too can be part again of this community, been in prison for 12 years.
Thank you, Martha. James?
Martha.
James is next.
It's a little short.
She can come. Read.
Okay, and then Sue. Okay. For folks who may have been at the Festival of Faiths at the Syndos Center on the 8th, there is a Beloved Community Interfaith Mural Reception, Thursday, October 17th from 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. At the Grail out in Loveland. I'll give this item to Peter, and then we'll put it up on the table, and anybody who may have seen or participated in that would want to go, there it is.
Thank you, James.
Sue? Thank you.
On this topic of
Is it green?
on the
Yeah.
topic of prison injustice, I just read the book Blind Injustice by Mark Goodsey, who is the local person along with Brandon, which is surprising to me. I didn't realize that all these years ago he started the Innocence Project in Ohio. And the opera, there was an opera based on this book. I just read the book. I highly recommend it if anybody's interested in this topic. Blind Injustice by Mark Goodson. Really eye-opening. God's.
I just saw the Judy Garland movie called Judy. It is really awesome. It's really awesome. It's terrible what happened to those child actors. They had them hooked on all kinds of drugs and abused them, and I didn't know that. But it's really a wonderful movie. It's called Judy.
I'm listening to a good book by Rachel Maddow called Blowout. It's amazing. It's on, I downloaded it on Audible and I listened to it coming to this meeting. Love it.
Just a reminder, when you go to your various candidates meetings and so forth, remember, the way I like to say it is, because I'm really concerned about your, whatever is your most heartfelt issue, I believe that we have to get the money out of politics and then ask them to commit to supporting that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Any other announcements? Are we ready? Nikki Foster, come on up. Here we go, Nikki Foster. It's for District 1, who is being currently held by Steve Chabot. I think we have some feelings for Steve Chabot here. Yes, we do. With the elephants. I didn't mean to wear elephants today, sorry. Here we go. You want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely, Alberta, thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful, please tell me if you can. I am a veteran and my hearing is not very good. So it's from all that jet noise, it's the sound of freedom, as we like to say in the Air Force. So please let me know if you can't hear me okay. It is wonderful to be in front of you for your lunch today. I hear that this group is incredibly involved, and I'm just so impressed that democracy is here at work every single day with activism and love for your community and hearing about the work with the homeless and other work for criminal justice. So I appreciate the work you're doing every day. This country wouldn't thrive without you, so continue to do that work. That's very important. As many of you may or may not know, I am running for U.S. Congress here in Ohio's 1st District. I wanted to share with you the borders because it can be confusing. So it covers all of Warren County. I live in Mason with my 2 kids and my husband. And then it covers the west side. It covers most of downtown. And then also Sharonville, Evendale, Indian Hills, and it is quite gerrymandered. So you may have to take a look at a map because some parts of College Hill are even cut out. And Minnie, Mabel, and I have talked before, and her house actually straddles both lines. So if you have questions, please come see myself, and Brittany is my campaign manager in the back if you'd like to chat with her later. So many of you may think that perhaps maybe the fight of my life was thousands of feet up in the air over the deserts of Iraq and the mountains of Afghanistan, since I was an Air Force pilot.
Can't do anything about it now.
It actually turns out that fight was down here at the cardiac ICU this time
I can
last
just
year when
barely
my
hear.
newborn son Henry.
People here can't
We were
hear.
given this very possible outcome that he may come home the next day, or he may need a heart transplant when I was pregnant with him last year. And we were pretty scared, my husband Rob and I. It turns out we were very fortunate. Within 5 days, his cardiac condition much improved. Once he started breathing air, his heart started functioning much better, and we were fortunate we could take him home. I'm happy to report that Henry just turned 5 a week ago, or excuse me, just turned 1 a week ago, excuse me. I'm accelerating it too much. Just turned 1 a year,
Very quick shot.
a week ago, and he is learning how to walk, and he is a very vibrant young boy, and from the doctor's visit we had the other day, he will not need to see the cardiologist for another year. So we're very thankful about his condition.
Very good.
This time last year, Bob and I looked at each other when we came home with a healthy baby, and we reflected on the fact there were other families in Children's Hospital that aren't as fortunate as we are. Ones that had to be there for months and months, getting the care they needed for their child. There was a 3-year-old there getting a pacemaker put in his chest. There was a 6-month-old that hadn't been home yet since he was born. And we just reflected a bit and said, if we're not fighting for those families, who is? And that's why I'm here today. I'm here to step up and fight for hardworking families like the one I grew up in. My husband was raised by a single mom. He was born in Steubenville, raised in a steel mill town. I was born to 2 immigrants. They both came here as children, seeking a better life, chasing the American dream. My father came here at the age of 16 from the Philippines. He was trained as an auto mechanic. he loved his work. For any of you who work with your hands, there's a satisfaction at the end of the day having to reflect on all the customers you've served. And Dad was always so proud. He'd come home in his uniform, said Bruce on his name tag, and he'd have sweat on his arms, grease under his fingernails, and a lot of times metal shavings in his curly hair. But he was always proud of the work that he did. As many of you probably like to do your own work on your home, at the age of 50, Dad was painting the exterior of the house and he was standing on a ladder. Dad slipped off the ladder, fell, broke his back, and when he couldn't work anymore, he lost everything. He went bankrupt. My mom was trained as a secretary. She went to trade school for high school, and she was a working mom as we were growing up, very proud of the work that she did. And because of Dad's condition, she had to make a deliberate choice to now take on the financial responsibilities on her shoulders. And so she had the courage to finish college at the age of 52. I never saw anyone work harder than Mom and Dad did. And it reminded me every day that this country was built on the backs of the people that shower at the end of the day and not before it. Very proud. And I'll tell you, they taught me about faith, commitment to service to community and to country. And so I decided to go to the Air Force Academy right after high school. I was the first in my family to graduate from college. And I was not expecting a military career. But September 11th happened when I was a junior, and all that changed. I decided to sign up for Air Force pilot training. That's where I met my husband, Rob. He and I got married right before I got my pilot wings, and we went on to fly tanker area refuelers together. And so if you've ever seen two airplanes meet in flight together, there's actually this giant boom arm that comes down and actually refuels the other aircraft. They were both touching in flight to be at the same altitude, the same airspeed. It is quite dangerous. And that was the job that we both did. We deployed together 3 times in the Middle East. In 2008, I got a call on the radio, and they said, "Hey, Tanker 88." I said, "Go ahead. You'll be refueling Tanker 89 tonight." And I looked down at my mission card, and I thought, oh, roger that. That's my husband. And so I did refuel Rob one night over Afghanistan. I deployed twice more without him. As I've mentioned, I had a 9-year-old son, Wyatt. Rob stayed home with Wyatt for 2 different deployments. I went to Afghanistan, and I went back to the Middle East, and Rob was home with our son, Wyatt. All total, I have over 200 combat missions over Iraq and Afghanistan. But I'll tell you, some of the toughest days were missing Wyatt's birthdays. I missed his 2nd birthday and his 4th birthday. Now I work at GE Aviation, where I manage big service contracts with big customers like United and Delta Airlines. So I've learned how to negotiate, and I understand how the business world operates. I'm also proud that I work with veterans. I'm on the Veterans Hire Pillar. What we do is we help veterans get hired into the company. And I'm also a career counselor for Hire Heroes USA, which is a national nonprofit that helps veterans find work when they're coming home from war and coming back to their civilian lives. We balance my work with Rob's job as an airline pilot at United Airlines. He just landed from London yesterday, and he's home with the kids today. We're very, very happy that he's home. But we balance up our jobs with Wyatt's piano, Wyatt's soccer, and Henry's new life. But the reason why we're stepping up to run is because we know what families in Ohio are going through, because we're going through it too. And we could use somebody like that in Congress. Because we all know after a quarter century in Washington, Steve Chabot has gone AWOL on the people he's supposed to serve. How many of you have heard of the scandal that's come out of his office? By show of hands. Yeah, and I appreciate the show of hands because, excuse me, I'm going to take a drink. It's been in the news, but there happens to be another gentleman that's in the news a lot too, so it's hard to keep track. Maybe I'm being generous with that term. So Steve Chabot has, there's money missing from his latest FEC filing. It's over $100,000. His campaign manager was missing, and his treasurer did not know he was treasurer. So we've got some real problems in the Chabot organization. And I will say that his tolerance for corruption in his organization is exactly what's wrong with Washington. How he puts special interests ahead of the hardworking families of Ohio very much disturbs me. And I will tell you, I've taken a very strong stance. I've called not only for an investigation into his organization, but I've also called for Congressman Chabot to step up and resign and do the right thing. Because I'll tell you, my new fight and the reason why I'm running for office is to take on the corrupt politicians in Washington, to be that voice for the voiceless. And I've already signed on to a no corporate PAC pledge, and I'm already seeking the endorsement of End Citizens United. And Dick, when you made that comment earlier about keeping money out of politics, as a daughter of 2 immigrants from a blue-collar family, that is absolutely what we need to do. And that's the way that we win these races and take back our democracy. But to do all of that, I'm going to need your help. And that's why I'm here this afternoon. We're looking for volunteers with our campaign. Brittany's here to take sign-ups. We're looking for anyone who wants to host a meet and greet. This is how this happens, is by meeting other neighbors and saying, the way we flip this district is through a Nikki Foster ticket. The way we get people to come out for us is with a Nikki Foster ticket. Because we know that voters respond when it comes to servant leadership and stepping up to run for the right reasons. And so I'm very excited to be here with you today, and I'm honored to answer any questions you may have for me. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Susan.
Hi, Susan.
Tell me what your burning issues are. There's no limit on what it can be.
Well, great. So I've mentioned it slightly before in this story, and a lot of what's inspired me to run is my son Henry's healthcare story. So someone like him, he has a hole in his heart, and he has had one since he was in the womb, and he has a pre-existing condition. And what we need to keep in mind as Democrats is that the Affordable Care Act has already been passed, and the Republicans deliberately tried to erode that legislation or that law that's already on the books, and we need to continue to fight what's already there, or fight for what's already there. And to me, that is protecting people with pre-existing conditions, keeping prescription drug care prices low, and keeping health care prices low. We know that a lot of those things haven't happened lately with the way that some leadership has been trying to erode those policies. And as a Democrat, we have to continue to fight and advocate for those families that can't fight for themselves. The ones that are in those hospital rooms, they're too worried about paying the bills to be able to advocate for themselves. That's why I'm stepping into this race, because I'm not a stranger to fighting for things I believe in.
I'm sorry.
My teacher voice should work, but could you tell us your ideas on gun control, which
Yeah, of
is
course.
a hot issue?
Kathy, I appreciate you asking that question. So just to share with you some background, because I think this is very powerful when we try to also convince independents and Republicans as to why a Nikki Foster ticket is so strong, is because I have carried firearms into combat. So when I flew Air Force missions, I flew an M9, or I would carry an M9 with me, an M9 handgun. It was in case we had a crash in the aircraft in Afghanistan over high terrain, and we had to defend ourselves from the Taliban. That's why I carried a firearm. Also because of the threat on the base at Bagram Air Base, we were regularly mortared, and when I lived there, and so we had to carry the firearm just in case we had a threat to the base. With all that being said, I understand firearms, and I also believe that we have to have smarter legislation to prevent the wrong people from getting a hold of those weapons. Just yesterday, there was some legislation proposed by the DeWine administration, and I don't think it goes far enough. I think that we need to have mandatory universal background checks, and I'm very strong about that. I have a very good friendships with Moms Demand Action. If many of you may or may not know, I ran for state representative last year while I was pregnant for state representative up in Warren County, and I managed to have to stand together with Moms Demand Action. I was an endorsed candidate from them last year, and when my race was over last year, I actually went to the state senate and spoke out against some scary legislation they tried to pass in lame duck when it came to stand your ground portions of the bill. I'm happy to report that we managed to get those portions of the bill stripped out. The current bill that they're talking about right now in Columbus doesn't go far enough on universal background checks. It doesn't address red flag laws, which very much concerns me. And anyone who is a combat veteran who has friends who have suffered from PTSD, anxiety, certain mental health conditions, I believe that we need to take weapons out of the hands of somebody who could do harm in a domestic world, like in their own home. Maybe they've had a dispute with their spouse or their girlfriend or boyfriend, and they probably shouldn't get a firearm. That's a red flag law. And then also, those that tend to have suicidal tendencies or thoughts, let's keep those weapons out of their hands because they may have a propensity for using it. And then lastly, as a combat veteran, I believe that we need to stand up, and I'm happy to do it, against assault weapons. And I do believe in reinstating the assault weapons ban.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy.
SB 123.
Let's go.
Thank you for coming. Chabot is part of the problem in this country. I've been reading recently about a comparison between industrial and finance capitalism. Can you discuss that? And you can talk about GE if you want, you don't have to.
Can you be a little bit more in depth, because industry is very broad. I'm in the aviation industry, so that's kind of my expertise, because I used to fly airplanes. I'm in the engine business.
So I saw industrial capitalism along with industrialization build the middle class in this country.
Absolutely.
It was the biggest class. It no longer is. I think capitalism has evolved from its industrial history to this finance capitalism, which doesn't produce anything. It moves money around and concentrates wealth. Any ideas?
I actually appreciate it, it's Bennett, right? But I appreciate that question because it's been really fascinating for me as a military veteran to have the 12 years of military experience and then now the business experience and actually see the numbers and realize that metrics drive behavior. Same thing in the military, same thing in business. And one thing that I realized that the opportunity of being in government and someone like myself is because I've lived in those spaces, I actually understand what drives those things. And so I think that coming from a blue collar home like I did, I feel like I need to be an advocate for middle class families because the middle class will start to shrink as we start to put more pressure on the middle class and we don't advocate for the middle class. And I believe that if we take care of the middle class, all boats will rise and it will actually be good. And I do think there are elements that have happened where, yes, in some financial ways you're actually moving money around but you're not creating any value. Is that what you're talking about? And I've noticed that myself. And I will say that the way we correct that is by electing better leaders that are actually going to advocate for middle class, blue collar families. And as you know, guys like Steve Chabot are bought and paid for by special interests. And so we got to start that work here on the ground. And I think that the more we have veterans in office, people who come from working class homes like myself, people that are friends to labor, we can right the ship. Things can start to get better and it actually will benefit not only the workers but also the local economies because we'll have our priorities straight. And I think that will be a benefit. And when you asked about some of my other priorities, big investment we need to make here in Southwest Ohio is infrastructure. As many of you know, the Brent Spence Bridge is way overdue for repair. The Western Hills Viaduct is way overdue for repair. Those are easy places we can make some changes that will actually benefit the local economy, but then also benefit working families. Did that help, Bennett, address your question?
A little.
It's very complicated, sir, but I'm happy to have a one-on-one discussion too. I worry about those things as well, and frankly, I feel like if you have a friend in me as a future representative, my door will be open to listen because I've been there. You know, when my dad had to file bankruptcy and had nothing, you know, he went on disability at a very young age. We've been there as a family, and I know I can empathize with the folks in my district. Is there any other follow-up questions?
Well, you've had a lot of experience. Your parents were immigrants.
Yes.
Is that topical these days? You work for GE. I guess I saw GE go from an industrial giant to a finance corporation, basically.
They moved a lot of their things around, but they're getting back to their industry focus. And obviously, I'm not the CEO of the company, but my understanding of everything was that they actually redid their portfolio because they realized they were getting away from their core focus. So they're getting, they're
I want to
focusing.
pick on GE, I just see that as a trend all over the place.
It is, and it troubles me too, sir.
Sure, it's like industry or banking, and we've gone with the banking. And it produces nothing.
Correct.
It concentrates wealth. Insurance does the same thing, medical insurance.
Sure. And that's why we need better advocates in Congress. You always think about follow the money, okay? Follow the money and you'll see where the influence lies. And so all the more reason why I'm stepping into this space, because we feel like it's the right time and place for us. And my husband's been super supportive because growing up in his home, he saw the same thing happening, sir. So I appreciate that.
Running is a hard job.
I actually enjoy it. It's kind of an extension of my service in the military, as you take care of the people around you, and the way you do that is by listening. So I appreciate you asking. Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
On the healthcare issue, do you support any of the programs, Medicare for All kind of programs? And two, are you pro-choice?
So first of all, the easiest one to answer, yes, I'm pro-choice. And then healthcare can be a really great way to talk about our values as a country. Again, I will say that we need to protect the Affordable Care Act as it currently exists. It's been really great for me as a candidate to also watch the debate happen live with all the primary candidates, because I think that's something we in the Midwest need to ask ourselves, is how do we not only flip the presidency, but also flip this district by having a healthcare message that is not only right for the American people, but that's also gonna help us win. So I think that's one thing we need to be very focused on, because if we can't win, then we won't get the things that we want to continue to take care of our families. So the way we do that is I'm open to a public option for healthcare, and I'll tell you, as somebody who's actually lived under a public option, I had TRICARE in the U.S. military. When I gave birth to my son Wyatt, we were in an Army hospital, and anytime we had to pay the bills, we never saw a bill because I was in the U.S. military. Right, and so,
Quality, absolute quality.
sure, and I'm also a disabled veteran, and so I do get some of my care through the VA. So I see merit in the public system, but I also, as someone who's been in big systems, see the challenges with change management and going from something privatized and partially public for some, Medicare, Medicaid, that if we do something too quickly, it can actually create more stir. So it's about, I think, making a strong progressive movement, and I think that enabling families to have more affordable care is the way to go. And I think I'm going to enjoy watching the debates with everybody else. And I'm happy to hear more feedback too, because I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all for now, but it would be really great if we got to a place where it was much more accessible and much more affordable for all. I think that's what the ACA tried to do, and it just didn't get there, so we have to continue to work at it. And I would love to be part of that fight, and that's why I'm stepping into this race. So I hope that helps answer your question.
There you go, you got it.
I can talk with that. I just wanted to follow up on the,
Louder.
I want to.
Yeah, use the mic.
I just want to follow up on the gun issue in the military.
Yeah.
I have an ex-son-in-law who came home to leave the serve, and my son.
What was his branch of service?
I'm sorry,
Do you know what branch of service he was in?
Army. He was the first deployment that Bush sent for 15 months.
Yeah, those are long ones. They also extended a lot of those guys. They would be there for 9 months, and then their orders would just get extended, so it was a rough time.
It was. And my son is a disabled Navy vet.
Okay.
But the issue is that my ex-son-in-law could get weapons because he had that military training, which he shouldn't have.
Sure.
He's violent. How do you go and, when you're saying background checks and everything, that's really, I know, but, and I understand the red flag laws, however, the military says, don't tell, so they don't get help. So how do you get a red flag when the military squashes the mental illness of their servicemen and women?
Can you share with me when he got out of the service?
and 10 or 11.
Okay. The reason why I asked that question is because I'm still an Air Force reservist. I still serve, I've been in for 16 years now, and I get promoted to Lieutenant Colonel in July of next year, which is exciting. Yeah, so I appreciate you asking that question because as a current reservist and a leader in the U.S. Air Force, I recruit for the Air Force Academy in Northern Kentucky, and the suicide rate in the Air Force is 22 people higher this year in the fall than it was all of last year. We have a serious problem in the U.S. Air Force, and leadership is trying to address it. But I will say, one of the reasons why I'm stepping up to run for Congress is I feel like we need the right people in Congress to influence the U.S. military and the decisions they make, and some of those are cultural. Some of those are standards that those general officers set within their organizations. Remember I just talked about how metrics drive behavior? I really think that's what's can be corrected in the general officer corps, and I won't go too far out to criticize them, but I feel like all of those people are products of their environments. So if they're showing that they've got really great metrics for this many enemies destroyed, this many targets, and this many troops plussed up, and so it ends up being about kind of perpetuating something that has an end, and kind of the forever wars. You have the wrong culture. I mean, look, it's 2019 and 9/11 happened 18 years ago, and we have to continue to talk about an exit strategy to be that right type of advocate for veterans. The way you do it is by asking the U.S. military what decisions they're making and why, and if that's even aligned with our values as a country anymore. And getting back to your question about mental health. So a lot of it's cultural. And the U.S. military has been doing a better job culturally about talking about resilience, talking about awareness and better training. It's going to take some time to change culture. And so you're basically asking a very specific question about a very holistic, systematic problem. And I think you've touched on something that concerns me too. And by having advocates in Congress that actually understand those problems, who actually know those veterans, and I'll tell you, a lot of my buddies that have come home from their 6th, their 7th, their 10th deployment, I mean, they're running on a razor-thin edge. And they're tired. And do you know why? It's an all-volunteer force. So we keep asking them to go and go and go, and we as the American people, because they're out of sight, out of mind, we have to realize what we're asking them to do. And then when they come home, we have to treat them with respect and even put them into the VA system in a way where they feel like they can have a family. I will say I have a lot of girlfriends of mine, two separate ones, that have started, one has started from a nonprofit, PTSD outreach, that she does hiking with folks in San Diego. She actually had PTSD after Iraq and helps other veterans to heal. But those are one-off scenarios where other vets are helping. And so to have an advocate in Congress that goes, hey, I know this is a problem, what are we doing, U.S. military and the VA, to correct these problems? And we need more advocates.
Do you think that women are more readily emotional to go and ask for help
Yes.
than the men coming home?
I would,
Because
yes.
it's, be a man, buck up, you can handle this?
Well, I think there's a couple things, and this is just, personal experience, where we just tend to want to nurture and take care of people as women. And so for me, that's one of the reasons why I give back through the higher pillar at GE, why I'm a career counselor at Higher Heroes USA, because I feel like giving back by helping a veteran transition is the right step. That's how I feel, that's my personal story. But I do think for men, the culture is getting better in the U.S. military, but it can always be better. Like, what are you doing for your brother and sister in arms to help them behind you, or even as a community? Like, just because you're not a veteran doesn't mean you can't help a veteran returning. Like, you obviously think very seriously about your family member who's struggling, and you want to outreach to them. I would challenge every person in this room to get to know their neighbors and even know their military veterans that are transitioning in their backyards, because a lot of them, and Cincinnati's pretty famous for, that's one of the reasons why I came to General Electric, was I came here through a veterans leadership program that helped me relocate, that helped me find work, that helped me get reintegrated into society through a 2-year leadership program. So that's one benefit of private industry, is that's GE is leading there. We just hit our 10-year anniversary of our Junior Officer Leadership Program to bring veteran leaders into the company. So there are things that we can do as a community, and sometimes you see private industry leading, government, community, but the way I would address issues like that would be an advocate, either through the committees I would be on, or even authoring bills on day one, and they would be very focused on, you know, how do we help our veteran population, and I'm happy to talk about it offline some more because it's one of my favorite things to talk about. So
I wanted to sort of follow up.
Can't hear you, Peter.
Straight out.
No?
No, hold it closer. It's just not working.
I wanted to follow up on Bennett's question. Two candidates, at least, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, have specifically focused on the disastrous power of corporations in this society. Dark money is the most gross manifestation of that. But I'm wondering, Congress is in a position to rein in Wall Street, is a simple way of putting it, but to actually cut back in serious ways on the disastrous power of corporations in our society. And that's, I think, was part of what I took to be the thrust of Bennett's question. We have reached a point where the quest for profits by corporations is categorically against the best interest of the American working class.
So what's the question?
Well, the question is if you would support Congress actively cutting back on the power of corporations.
Okay, I guess the biggest thing is, that's one reason why I've taken that no corporate PAC pledge. I won't accept a dime of corporate PAC money. But also, when you have someone who comes from a working class family and actually has seen the financial numbers, so one of my rotations at GE Aviation was in mergers and acquisitions. And so I did get an insight, albeit I can't discuss the details, into what decisions are made at those levels and why. And I think that that's why I'm running for office too, is because I kind of understand what incentivizes a company to make the decisions they make. And when you understand those incentives, there's carrots and sticks that you can use as a government to help things along, but also encourage companies to want to invest here in Southwest Ohio. And I think that's what it's about, is understanding the greater macroeconomics of what drives things here. And one thing that's really important is our education of our youth. I know we've got a lot of teachers in the room, but the biggest thing is that as the baby boomers start to retire, we need to have more people entering into industry. You hear all the time that automation is replacing people, but unemployment is actually pretty low. And so we're going to need to continue to train skilled workers to do the work, plumbing, welding, electricians. My dad was an auto mechanic. We need to continue to reinvest in those places. And that, I think, a partnership with business is the way to do it. And I've actually talked to some, friends at my company in the HR area, and they actually know that some of the gaps countrywide is in those highly skilled laborers. And we've even talked about strategies to bring veterans into that workforce. So that's why I want to run for office, is because I understand some of the demands, and I think that there's some great solutions we can come to as an elected official to help facilitate things with private industry and to work together. So I hope that answers your question a little bit, but does it?
I asked that in Congress you would support legal action against the power of certain kinds of corporations to control our lives. I mean, I understand there are advantages in what you call partnership with business, but I also think we also need to understand there is a reality of class warfare, that the profits are really not to the best advantage of the vast majority of people.
Well, and that's why I mentioned carrots and sticks, okay? So just to be a lot more clear, a carrot would be an incentive for a business to invest, and a stick would be to penalize should they do the wrong thing. And I think that when I work working at a company that's been around for over 100 years, we just had our 100-year anniversary at GE Aviation, the way that you get people from A to B in an aviation industry is you do the right thing, because people's lives are on the line, but not every business does the right thing. And so I think what you're talking about is when businesses aren't doing the right thing, what are we doing about it as a government? And we should hold people accountable. Is that what you're asking? Yes, so I figured, that's why I would ask you if I answered it, because I want to be more specific and more clear, because I do think that we need to continue to reinvest in our community, and the way we do that is by encouraging companies to stay. It is a global economy, so we also have to think systematically. So there are some things that I'm happy to discuss in more detail, but I hope that helps.
May I?
Thank you, Nikki.
Yes.
One of the things to reframe this is that, now I lost my train of thought. Elizabeth Warren says it all the time. She says, I'm a capitalist. We're not against corporations, but when corporations become abusive, it's the abuse. So a good, conscientious corporations have no worry at all. But what I wanted to talk about directly is the mood of the nation. For 10 years since Citizens United, the polling rate about 80% and the money politics. More recently, Lawrence Lessig, who is a Harvard professor, said the polling rates are now up to 93%.
Oh, I believe that, yeah.
But then he says the problem is 91% think there ain't nothing we can do about it. So what I'm hoping is that you and other candidates, and when you have a chance to talk with other candidates, giving hope where there is hopelessness, that's what will draw them out. If you get over the top on this, put this as the floor, and then say we're not going to get anywhere until we take big money, and then talk the other things.
Yeah, absolutely.
You will get more response from that than a whole lot of campaign contributions. So I know that you need to.
Well, a couple things. So one of our core ethos as an Air Force Academy graduate is our honor code. Is anybody familiar with honor codes at military academies? It is, I will not lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate among us anyone who does. Toleration clause is unique to us, and West Point Navy doesn't have it. But I will tell you that when you're brought up in an environment where you're held accountable for your actions, and then when you're in command of an aircraft, and there are people inside your aircraft and people on the ground that are counting on you to do the right thing, that's what you do, Dick. And the way you do that is by not accepting corporate PAC money, by holding people accountable for their actions, by if you have bad actors, like certain companies that are bad actors, then you hold them accountable. That's very simple, but it's why I'm running for Congress, is because I was raised as an officer, I was trained as a pilot to bring them home safely every day, and the way you do that is by doing the right thing. You have lots of constraints when you're flying a combat mission. There's never enough time, there's never enough resources, there's never enough fuel. And, you don't ask what party that other person belongs to, you work together to get the job done. And that's why I'm stepping up to run, because we need more servant leaders that are stepping into these spaces to challenge people like Steve Chabot and to actually flip this district. And the way we do that is by not only energizing our base, which I'm hoping we will do with the presidential election, but also by convincing our friends and neighbors that are independents and Republicans to come vote for a Nikki Foster ticket, because that's how we flip this district, is by saying, hey, I've got this friend of mine, Nikki's running, she's an Air Force veteran, she wants to do the right thing, let's show up and help her get elected and help her win. And so that's again our strategy and why we're running, is because we have to change these conversations. And if the way we do it is by sharing with them is that someone who's excited about serving and wants to do it for the right reasons.
May I,
Go ahead, Mark.
in terms of veterans.
Louder.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Veterans, like so many people, have, if they're ill, if they have trauma and all from their service, they can't even get medical care half the time. And so, my God, the public option in the so-called Obamacare is great if we could get it, but why not get, like all other Western countries have? I mean, we spend the most of any country on our health care and get the least for it. That has got to stop. Now,
So,
Medicare for all would not have to mean that everybody suddenly gives up their private insurance, in my opinion. It would
Right.
not have to mean that. I think people, once we got it through a bill in Congress, so it would include everything, dental, vision, why not? Nobody in Scandinavia has ever been turned down for anything for years. And most of Europe has Medicare for all, so to speak. Surely we could get that. It's the corporations, the health industry again, that will not let us have it. We probably won't get it because they'll have their way. But I'm just saying, veterans and everybody would benefit from Medicare for all. We would pay for it through our taxes. I hope you will support that if you were to
is that what your
be
question
in
is?
Congress. Yes, would you support a Medicare for all?
Like I mentioned before, I think a public option would be a great way to start moving forward. I think that the first thing we need to do is to continue to win districts just like this one and to defend the Affordable Care Act as it currently exists. And let's work together to get to a place where a public option is going to work. And I think the way we do that is having advocates like myself in Congress. So we will get there
What
together.
would that be like, in your opinion? The public option would be open to everybody, but what would it cover, in your opinion?
So I think what's interesting about this dialogue that we're all having is that folks want to have like a specific plan to go point to. And as a representative, my job would be to pass legislation and to work together with others. And the way you do that is by talking, compromising, chatting about what's going to happen and what's going to pass. So I guess my comment to you is, what would you like to see? You know, how do we work in places like this that are, you know, very diverse backgrounds in a city like Cincinnati where we have lots of different opinions and we have to get this district flipped. So where do you think the victory lies for the nation and for the district?
Polls show everybody wants Medicare for all. We all want it. We want it. Nobody, the only way that people complain about it in the national polls is if everybody had to give up their private insurance before they knew what they would get from Medicare for all. So I don't know why that would be part of it. So as far as, yes, I would support the public option. And again, the nation showed recently that 25% of people in this country that need treatment don't get it, including surgery, because they're afraid they'll go bankrupt if they have a big operation. Can't live like that.
Well, I appreciate you asking. I think it's important to know that you will have an advocate through me. Who's that?
This is my granddaughter. She's going to be the next Democrat. Yeah.
She is a Democrat.
She's cute.
Listen, I'm very active in this area, and I follow Steve Chabot everywhere. And
She means that.
she dogs him. I did. I actually have started a rapid response team so that we
Good for you.
can track him. But anyways, you know, he does all of the talking points that Trump does. There's nothing that he doesn't follow. And my concern is that we need to make sure that we have got someone in there that is going to represent us and go after. He actually grabbed my arm one day when we were talking on the side and said, "Oh yeah," and he started laughing. He says, "Yeah, he lies all the time and all this kind of stuff."
He was laughing it off about Trump's.
Yeah, he was snickering about Trump lying so much, you know, and fake news
Right.
and alternative facts.
Yeah.
You know, the whole bit, and it really ticked me off. Well, we have got a situation now where we've got a president that is impeachable. As far as I'm concerned, I felt this for last year. Anyways, I need to know that you're gonna hold Trump accountable
And that is probably one of my biggest things right now, is we need to get that idiot out. And there's a possibility that Trump will win at the end of this, and you're gonna have to deal with him during the next cycle.
It's possible.
And I need to know that you're gonna stand up there and you're gonna actually push. I need to know that you're gonna be working with us and we can help support you. But I don't want anybody that we put in this position to be thinking about their current job instead of going after him. Because this is our country and we have got to get this straightened out.
But regardless whether it's Trump or not.
Yeah.
So I think what you're touching on is the core of who we are as Americans, which is taking care of our country and honoring the Constitution. And President Trump has repeatedly flown in the face of our Constitution. Number one is some of the collaboration with the Russians back in the 2016 election. There's enough evidence there that in the very first week of my campaign, I said that we needed to start impeachment proceedings on the president. I put it on my Twitter page, and it's very easy for me to make these strong stances because as an Air Force leader, that's what you do. To take care of your people, to bring them home safely, you have to have integrity and you have to do the right thing because your troops are watching you and people's lives are on the line. So I believe that yes, we need to start impeachment proceedings and we already have. And I took that stance 2 months ago, so I appreciate you asking because that is a big defining moment for me in my candidacy was by being strong on impeachment against President Trump. Now, the other things that have come to light, the emoluments clause, his abuse of power when it comes to his private businesses, how many times he's went to Mar-a-Lago, how many times he's been to the Scotland hotels, those concern me greatly. And your hard-earned dollar that funds his security, that funds the Department of Defense, is also going into his private businesses, and he knows it, okay? So that's also an impeachable offense. And then all these things that have come out about Ukraine, and even his statements with China this past week. As a military veteran, I had a top secret security clearance with a special SCI condition. So in order to see certain materials, I had to go through the rigor that it took to be able to do that. And with having an immigrant family background, it was quite an ordeal. Because they want to know, who do you know, who's in foreign governments, and who are your family members. And so he needs to be held to that same level of standard, and right now, a lot of the things that he's doing troubles me greatly as a military veteran. Because my friends right now, my fellow KC-10 pilots are all flying in harm's way, and some of the things he's doing that are actually going to compromise our relationships. And then just yesterday, the comments he was making about Turkey concern me even greater, because we've formed those alliances for decades, and the Middle East has been a place where I've been several times. We've always had a good relationship with the Turkish government, and when he makes those comments, not only is he alienating Turkey, but then he can also be risking our Kurdish friends in Syria and Iraq. So it's very complicated, but it's with what he's getting us into, but it's not complicated when it comes to doing the right thing. And so I've called for impeachment proceedings. I believe doing the right thing is how you win this race, and doing the right thing will actually reorient a lot of independents or Republicans that are kind of lost their way.
We have
And
time
the
for
way
a few
that we
more
bring
questions.
them in is by making them feel confident in a servant leader who's going to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Hello, Nikki.
Yes.
You're
Much
very-
closer.
You're very articulate, and I'm very impressed, and I wish you well in that western district. I live with the indigenous Mayans in Guatemala, and I hope to live there the rest of my life, but health reasons brought me back. And but they asked me, they pleaded with me, the indigenous Mayans pleaded with me to say, please help this immigration situation. And there's many aspects of it I could discuss with you. I'd be happy to, of course. We have a wonderful immigration legal center on the west side. I hope you know about it. The one area I'd like to just raise for all of our attention is that there's a proposal, and it sounds really good, to give money to Central American countries to make life better for the indigenous people. However, we'd have to be dealing with the leaders there, and they are so well known for the horrible conditions that they do not deal with in any way. So for example, my Mayan friends, some of whom live on the west side now, look small. Why? Because they do not get proper nutrition.
Right.
So to give money to those countries to make conditions better, it's a waste of money. It'll go in the pockets of the wealthy. I can assure you of that. And I want to know, I really don't even know how to frame the question, except do you know about this issue? And if so, will you help to work against making money available to those despots?
Thanks, Tommy. So number one, there was a really great TED Talk that I listened to. I didn't agree with all the policies, but Congressman Hurd, who's actually down on the border, he's a Republican, had a really interesting TED Talk talking about immigration reform. I encourage you all to listen to it. It's always wonderful, and I appreciate everybody sharing books and knowledge, because I think that's how we broaden our world and understand more. So just getting to know you and see you today, like, I really hope you can share your information with Brittany so we can even talk a little bit more on an intimate level when it comes to immigration, because it's a very complicated system. And being a daughter of two immigrants who knows it better than I do, I will say a couple ways I'll address your question. First, tell a story. And that story is my father came to the U.S. in the late 60s through the chain immigration system through family. And I believe that's a really important way to continue to grow America. People aren't having as many babies as they used to, and the way that we continue to grow our population is through immigration. I think it's an important way to grow our economy. Okay. My mom came through a refugee situation in the 60s too. And so both of them came because of the compassion that Americans had for people like my family. My mom is half Indonesian and half Dutch. My father's half Filipino and half Scottish Canadian. So this is what you get. So I'm half Asian, I'm half European, and there are people in my family that are brown people. My grandmother lived with us when I was growing up. So when I hear immigration, when I hear some of the things happening at the border, they concern me greatly, because that feels like my auntie or my grandfather or my grandmother. It concerns me when people aren't being treated humanely. When you talk about money with foreign governments. Having been Filipino, my father raised me to always be conscious of your democracy, conscious of what decisions are being made and why, and who's at the helm. Because in the Philippines, being a former Spanish colony, we've seen kind of this swing, right, with dictatorships and then democracy, and dictatorships and democracy. It was something he always impressed upon me at a young age, is if we're not at the table, then we're on the menu, right? So we have to always be conscious of what's happening. And so, my father was a Vietnam War protester, and I went to the Air Force Academy. So there were some interesting things that happened in my home where we were always challenging each other in positive ways, but it was always that there can be some good things that come out of these healthy discussions. But I do worry about funneling money to governments that are corrupt. All you end up with is a continued problem, and it's not a way to humanely address it. So I'm happy to discuss more details there, but you have to know those devils are in the details. So if you're giving that money to Central American countries that are not taking care of the assets you're giving them, then perhaps we need to rethink our foreign aid. And it's always understanding them holistically. My background is in international relations. I did get a master's in diplomacy while I was flying in and out of Iraq and Afghanistan. So to me, I feel like a lot of these things are interconnected. So I appreciate you asking, because I want to be an advocate for immigrant families like my own, and I feel like there are solutions we can come to as a country. And I think a lot of things you're seeing when it comes to Trump's language on the border wall is simply propaganda, and it's a way to get people away, or to be blaming somebody for some issues that aren't even real issues. I think we need better leadership to try to change those conversations. So happy to be stepping in as a future representative and kind of change those conversations and humanize those conversations and be like, hey, I'm from an immigrant family too. I'm okay. I served in the military. Like, let's work together and let's see the goodness in each other. So thank you, Tommy. Yes,
I have two questions.
Louder.
Not questions, I have This doesn't work, I'm telling you right now.
Right.
It's called the flu.
I'll trade you when you're done. Yeah.
Um,
Remember the broken one?
First of all, I think that when you talk about not trusting the people and leaders in South America and Central America, I would agree. However, I don't trust our leaders when they go into South and Central America because we back the wrong people. We back the people that are going to let our companies in, and they don't give a damn about the people and bringing them up. I also wanted to speak about healthcare. I've lived in 2 countries in Europe. I have 2 children that were born in England, and so I know pretty much about what it was like. And so what infuriates me are 2 things. One is we can't afford it. We're the richest country. And if countries that are poorer than us can afford it, we certainly can. And so this business of everything coming incrementally really means it gives the other people who have a financial interest in it in knocking it down. And so I think that we need to say, no, we're giving everybody health care. And yes, we pay for it. But it's not the same because I lived in England with a terrible allowance or wage. I taught there. And I could still go to the doctor and not have to worry that this is going to put me out on the street or whatever. So that's what I'm saying. So what I want to know is why do we do so much on incrementalization when we want to? And not say, look, this makes sense, let's do it.
Yeah.
Andy's the last one.
I appreciate you asking those questions. I think we as a country have to figure out what our priorities are. And I think that's what this presidential election will be about. Is number one, we have a President Trump at the helm who is a businessman that wants to profit off the government. So first of all, we have to focus on presidential elections, getting the right people elected and getting that taken care of. We also have to focus on flipping a district like this one. And if what our priorities are as Democrats is having a better public option, well, let's keep fighting for it. Let's fight for it together and share those thoughts with me. Look, I'm an open book. I want to be a vessel for your input. So if this is the way that we are going to go and we can continue to influence our friends and neighbors so that they can come to the polls and flip this district, then let's do it. I think that's what we're about is the American people, including Southwest Ohio and the first district, we have to come together and say, hey, these are our priorities and this is what's important to our elected officials, and let's influence that through our vote and through the way that we influence our elected officials. Guys like Steve Chabot, he takes lots of money from prescription drug care companies, lots of money from healthcare companies. This is the reason why we're kind of stuck in this rut. And so the way that we get out of it is by fighting for it at our levels and then working together to make it happen. So I appreciate you asking those tough questions because you're right, in some cases incremental change can be an opportunity for a businessman or woman to do harm. And so the best thing to be as a leader and as a future representative is be an advocate for your community and to do the right thing. And if the right thing is giving affordable health care like we've talked about, let's find ways to get there together and let's make those tough decisions together. So I appreciate your input there.
If you guys want further information on healthcare, I think you remember about a year and a half ago, Lloyd Barkin came to our group. He's Be a Hero. He has interviewed 5 presidential candidates. He's invited them all to come in for an interview. Now, mind you, Audie is dying from ALS. He just has months to live.
Yeah.
And yet, but he's been arrested numerous times and put into jail because he refuses to stop fighting. So only 5 of the candidates have accepted his interview, and those are online at beahero.com. You'll be able to hear those. It's very interesting, those people who have not accepted his invitation to sit down and have a heart-to-heart talk on healthcare. So you'll find out lots of information if you want to find out where the presidential candidates are on healthcare. I'd like to thank Nikki for being here. Thank you so much, because we need a fighter. Because Steve Chabot Steve Chabot didn't used to be so bad. But his sister is one of our Cincinnati Public School teachers.
She is, yes.
And she said the money has totally corrupted him.
Wow.
He was not like this, he was not raised this way. She said he has been corrupted by the money.
That reputation being very independent-minded and not following the party
Yeah.
line and all of
He
that.
used to have his act together, he used to be a labor advocate, he used to work with the letter carriers all the time and advocate for them. The money has changed him, so the dark money needs to go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you, Nikki Foster. Really done a good job. Next week, Local Initiative Support Corporation, Kathy Schwab, come on back. We've got another good week for you next week. You've been a great audience. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Stan.
Thank you for your friend.
I am, yes.